Hello and welcome back to another vintage inspired video. For today's video, we again find ourselves out at Forrest Lawn Memorial Park in Glendale, California. I was recently out here visiting Jimmy Stewart. If you want to see that video, I'll put a link right here. Today, I'm here to visit a few other notable people of the old Hollywood era. Specifically, I am here to visit the most preeminent costume designer of her time. This woman created some of the most iconic dresses of the old Hollywood era, and that would be Miss Edith Head.
With the film in production, the costume designer continues on stage, keeping a watchful eye on the costumes she has designed, making last-minute improvements, making sure that her creations reveal to best advantage the purpose for which they were designed.
To find Edith Head, we're going to have to make a trek up this rather large hill. It's really quite steep. I don't think the video is doing it justice, but I think we'll make it. I always try my best to not walk over any of the graves. Sometimes it is not possible, especially with how many people are buried on this hillside and throughout Forrest Lawn. I have been here once before, and the first time trying to find her was actually pretty challenging. I'm trying to remember where she was at. Somewhere. I think when I had first looked, she was not where I thought she was supposed to be. And now I'm a little at a loss. We'll find. Okay, I found her. I had to walk just a couple more steps. So here is the final resting spot. One of the best costume designers who ever did it, Miss Edith Head. And it looks like she has her second husband's last name there. I believe it's Enan. Beloved wife, friend, artist. I love that it says artist. 1981. And she is buried next to her second husband, who died just a few years before her. His name, Wired Enan. I'm not exactly sure if I'm saying that all correctly, and if I am not, I apologize. It says in loving memory, 1979. She studied at Berkeley and at Stanford, but not for art. She studied French and Romance languages, respectively, and in 1923 married her first husband, Charles Head. Though they divorced in 1938, she had established herself as a costume designer in Hollywood and ended up sticking with his last name as her professional name for life. In 1924, she was hired as a sketch artist at Paramount Studios, where she ended up being for the majority of her career. But she landed this job despite lacking any experience or credentials, and she later admitted she had some help with this. After studying at Berkeley and Stanford, she did go on to study art, and for the interview, she borrowed some of her fellow classmates' sketches to use as her own portfolio, and that's what helped get her the job. But I think she more than enough proved herself worthy of that position. She became a household name when the Academy Awards decided to add a Best Costume category. From there, she went on to be nominated 35 times. She won 8 times.
Edith Head for Roman Holiday.
And is the most awarded woman in the Academy's history, and was nominated annually from 1944 to 1966. If that doesn't tell you about the amazing body of work that this woman produced and her skill and her talent, I don't know what does. She created some of my most favorite dresses of the era. Before becoming a costume designer, her first job was as a school teacher teaching French, then later Spanish. Her first position was at a school in La Jolla, which is near me, so that is just a fun fact I enjoy. I call her the hardest working woman in show business for the amount of films she worked on. It is endless. She's credited on over 1,000 films, in addition to her work in television and events, so I'm really not sure when she slept. She consulted heavily with her female stars, which was not such a common practice of the day, and this made her a real favorite of theirs. She worked with Bette Davis, Barbara Stanwyck, Rita Hayworth, Grace Kelly, Elizabeth Taylor, Audrey Hepburn, which resulted in some of my most favorite dresses. Audrey Hepburn was under contract at Paramount, and that is where Edith Head worked, so it resulted in them working on a number of films together. Just some of the films she designed for included I Married a Witch, Sunset Boulevard, Double Indemnity, Holiday Inn, White Christmas, the Audrey Hepburn movies, Roman Holiday, Sabrina, Funny Face, Breakfast at Tiffany's. I love everything she wears in Funny Face, but to be fair, Givenchy had a hand in all of those films besides Roman Holiday. She worked with Hitchcock a lot, so there's Rear Window. Everything Grace Kelly wears in that is phenomenal. To Catch a Thief, Vertigo, The Man Who Knew Too Much, and then others, A Place in the Sun. And for Bewitched fans, she designed Endora's costumes, and she had some fun, wild things to wear. She worked for Paramount Studios for 44 years, and in 1967, they decided not to renew her contract. And then Alfred Hitchcock, who was over at Universal Studios, asked her to come and join him there, and she did, and that resulted in those Hitchcock films that I mentioned. She died 4 days before her 84th birthday from bone marrow disease. Rest in peace, Edith Head. Thank you for creating some of the most amazing and iconic dresses in old Hollywood history. They are definitely my favorites.
After we test them, we all sit around like a jury and say, well, that dress is a lovely dress. I really like it. But don't you think that it's a little too overboard, a little too this, a little too that?
Only when production ends does her assignment end. Only to begin all over again as new pictures go into production to claim her expert attention to making wardrobe right.
Okay, we took a little drive to come over and visit our next old Hollywood entertainer, and he is buried right over here. If you are a Universal horror fan, you're gonna know who this is. Here he is. This is the grave of Dwight Fry, loved husband, father, son, 1899 to 1943. And this may be a name some of you are not immediately familiar with, but have you seen Dracula starring Bela Lugosi? This is the actor who first performed Renfield in the film version of Dracula.
Why, he's mad. Look at his eyes. Why, the man's gone crazy.
A red mist spread over the lawn, coming on like a flame of fire. And then he parted it. And I could see that there were thousands of rats.
In addition to starring as Renfield and Dracula, he played Fritz and Frankenstein and Carl and the Bride of Frankenstein, which was supposed to be a larger role but ended up being cut for time. He also was in The Invisible Man as an uncredited reporter. I was watching that film and I saw him and I was like, I know who that is. And I looked it up and saw he was uncredited, which I don't know why, because he had a line. I think he had a couple lines. So you could call him a classic Universal horror figure himself. I know we talk a lot about Bela Lugosi and Boris Karloff, Lon Chaney Jr., but Dwight Fry should also be mentioned with all of those people. He made his name as a stage actor in the 1920s, playing, of all things, comedic roles. In films, he was typecast as the wild-eyed villain, but into the 1940s, he continued to appear in theatrical productions ranging from comedies to musicals. During World War II, he contributed to the war effort by working nights as a tool designer, and he passed away at 44 in 1943 after he suffered a heart attack while traveling by bus in Hollywood. And this is the beautiful view from where he is buried. Unfortunately, we're not going to be visiting that third person I mentioned. That is because he is entombed inside of the mausoleum and they don't allow photos and videos, so wah wah. But that would have been Hal Wallis, who was a very prominent producer in the old Hollywood era, mainly with Warner Brothers, later his own independent production company in association with Paramount Studios. He produced Casablanca, The Maltese Falcon. Later in his career, he worked with Elvis and Dean Martin. We won't be seeing him. Maybe I'll put a photo right here that someone else has taken. That does it for today's video. Thank you so much for coming along with me to pay respects to these notables of the old Hollywood era. I hope that you enjoyed. I hope that you learned something. And until that next video, I am wishing you a super swell day, and I will see you then. Bye.
Stop by and take
What
a
are you
look.
going to wear?
What am I going to wear to the, what do you think I should wear?
Something fabulous.
Oh, I should really glamour it up.